Siyabonga iculo from art ngithanda ukubingelela umphathi wohlelo ngibingelele kusuka kubaba wethu uProfessor Natal uche wethu waka Humanities odini bethu ama-academic leaders abafundi bethu kanye nama-matters ala sinema-art institute ekhona la bese ngithi thokoza mkhulu. Ngiyathanda futhi noku-acknowledge umanager wethu wakama-art ngiyambona uDr. Thelezi siyabonga ukuthi ukwazile ukufika. Colleagues, my task is a very simple one. Is just to introduce Ubaba Mkhulu Nsingiza. Mkhulu Nsingiza is the CEO of the Mandela Foundation, whose mission is to reconnect the people of Africa to their former glory. He is a Kemetic historian and a student of the Baba Credo Mutwa Kemetic African philosophy. He is also the co-founder of the Kemetic African Royal Calendar and the co-founder of the Great Empire of Kemetic movement. The Great Empire of Kemetic movement is the implementation arm of the Mandela Foundation, whose work is to unite Africans on the continent and in the diaspora outside politics, religion and ethnicity. Thokoza mkhulu siyakwamukela.
Thokozani ngiyabonga kakhulu ngicela sizangazi ngizozimuva kanjani mama angisabona okay ngibonga kakhulu ukuthi nginyathele namhlanje ngibonge kakhulu indlovukazi Silebu, ngibonge noprofessor Mkhize, Nhlanhla Mkhize, ngoba ukuze sibe la besicelile ukuthi sizogubha umkhosi wenjikalanga ngoJuni, but manje azange kube nesikhathi esi-enough ngoba besifuna ukuzoyenza umlindelo la, ngoba le ndawo it sits strategically in what is called the electric field of Earth passes through here. So it was very important for us ukuthi senze umlindelo la. But manje Professor Mkhize was very busy in the office. It was during my exams. He then initiated this discussion ukuthi kunganjani ke Mkhulu uzoyenza i-presentation, just choose a topic ingakho sila namhlanje. Le ndawo le semqoka kakhulu, not only as a university, but nje uthi it sits along the golden meridian. Iqala la eBluff. La iqala khona city is the root chakra of Earth, where the electromagnetic field of Earth starts, la eBluff. Inyuke yodlulela le kuma pyramids of Giza, idlula enzalo yelanga, izoshaya le phezulu. Manje siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi samukele ngoba isikhathini esiningi information nolwazi lwase-Africa is not accepted on our continent. Why? Because the rest of the continent is still colonized. You know why? Because Western philosophy rules. So ithuba leli esilitholile, and we're hoping ukuthi the Ma'at Institute, the Ma'at Institute ingaba an influence enough so that we even change the name of the university, University of KZN. Aina Sikri. Ifuna sibize with one of those names that create resonance. Mawubiza lelo gama ehleli endaweni esemqoka kube nje resonance between what you are saying and the ndawo okuyo. We hope ukuthi njengoba Professor Smith ukhulumile about revolution. Revolution is happening all over the continent and amongst African people, and that revolution needs to be fed by the right information in knowledge system of the continent. Meaning all these institutions, in South Africa have to transform for them to be able to teach the right type of content. Because Africa has the largest, literature in the world. So therefore we don't need a foreign content. Your content is enough in terms of, your science, your mathematics, your astronomy, all these, sciences we do have. So Abantu needs to be given an opportunity for them to understand. We are coming to present the Kemetic African creation story. How Africans saw the universe coming into being. And that is the oldest story that we are expecting all universities are able to actually articulate it and teach it to the children. Not the Big Bang story. The Big Bang story is secondary to the ancient, Kemetic African, creation story. Indlovukazi introduced the Mandela Foundation. The Mandela Foundation, mandate yayo was to research all the information, pre-colonial, information, because we find that a lot of people focus more on the colonial history of the continent. And that's not where the value is. The value, it is a pre-colonial. You know, this is where you understand where we were as African people. So it is, you know, then we took it upon ourselves, myself, for us to actually make research. The person that gave us the whole foundation was Baba Credo. He gave us a solid foundation for us to be able to understand, you know, that a content, pre-colonial, before colonizers came to the continent, and this is where the gem is, not, you know, after colonization, because you are then talking, you know, subjugation there. Even, you know, the name Africa, I'm hoping in the near future will change, because that name is associated with colonization. We need to revert back the name, the original name, which is Kemetic. We are called, you know, Southern Kemetic. Egypt is called Northern Kemetic. So, this is Mpumalanga. I'm not going to read because it's none. Just to explain. Mpumalanga is our ZepTepi, the genesis, the beginning of life. Agusho research that was done by UNESCO. It says that all organisms that live on Earth started here, in Mpumalanga. Some of you have seen us fighting for Inzalelanga. Why? Because it's an ancient site that holds, you know, our heritage as African people. This is where the sun and the stars were birthed. Asikhulumi ngokuthi, you know, ihaba itamsak. You know, when the scientists talk about the cooling, the first cooling after the volcanic eruption, it happened in Mpumalanga. And most of the people of the continent are not aware of that situation. Why? Because why is it hidden in history? You know, because this is what you give us a foundation to say each genesis of life started here. You know, two artifacts that will give, you know, evidence that it is in Zalolanga. It's over 7,000 years old. Those, you know, stone blocks that created the first calendar in the world. That is the oldest calendar. It means all other calendars. You know, they followed, you know, that one. And like it says here, Indabagai Konjwa. Today, white people call it Makonjwa Mountain. Do you see distortion? Indabagai Konjwa. Or Kokobe respected that mountain because it's associated with the origins of life itself. Utiwa Ikonjwa Twister. Mountain. These are the first mountains that cooled after the volcanic eruption. So when we talk about the African creation story, we can now locate it. It's nowhere in the east, not in Ethiopia, it's not in Israel, it's nowhere there. It's right here. Right here at home. So this is you know, what we are hoping in future there could be arrangement, because what I said was that the university or institutions can never transform themselves because they were not yet, you know, for the transformation that the students are demanding. When they talk about transformation of institutions, they are not talking about replacing a black professor, a white professor with a black professor. You know, the fruit is the same. So it means the institutions therefore to go outside themselves, for them to go and look for that content that they are supposed to then teach, you know, the students. So it's very important, you know, I'm so happy Professor Mkhulu ukuthi useqalile ukubiza institute the Art Institute. Remember, Mama is the foundation is the pathway that every living creature has to follow. And once you divert from that pathway, you are violating the natural laws, of the universe. So it's a good foundation, it's a good start. But now, sizofundisa la because njengoba ngisho ukuthi you will never find this content any other institution except outside the institution. So when we talk about inzalo ilento the African creation story, we rely on tablets like these, the emerald tablet of Thoth, okhokho bethu bambiza uJehuti. uJehuti uye kuthiwa bawufunda the emerald tablet, he reincarnates. He lived for thousands of years, he's still alive. He reincarnates himself and be amongst men. And yet, he is that spirit. And sometimes he reincarnates into ourselves. So sibona njengoba credo izenzo zakhe. For me, you can't separate Baba Credo from Imhotep. Exactly the same thing. Baba Credo was a scientist, was an architect. Imhotep was like that as well. So that is the future we are demanding. Don't tell us about Newton or Einstein. Tell us about Imhotep and Amenhotep, the first African scientists. So Baba Credo told us about Ujehuti. When we talk about the creation story, we rely a lot on what was written by Jehuti. Not only by Jehuti, but what then follows. The Shabaka stone. The Shabaka stone. It was one of those books that were written earlier. Okokobeti wrote on papyrus. They used the animal skin, but as you know, that is also affected by the weather, the temperature and everything. So they were running a risk of losing a lot of content that was written by their forebears. Then the Shabaka, King Shabaka of ancient Kemetic, who was in Kush. But then, what we call Egypt. Egypt, remember, it's a Greek word. It has nothing to do with Africa. That place is called Kemetic. And we call it Northern Kemetic because it's in the north. And we wish the whole continent can be renamed Kemetic. But it will be up to the people I sit here, because these are intellectuals that are supposed to make important and serious interventions in terms of the lives of African people, so that in future it becomes a much brighter. We must be Abu Shabaka, who saw the value of losing important information. He then said, let us carve it in stone for posterity, so that it's never lost. So this is how it was discovered. This is the basis of what is called modern science. What is written on the Shabaka stone, this is what has started, in knowledge system of the Westerners. It's a very scientific information. It describes how Africans saw the universe coming to being. When you are talking about quantum science, quantum theory, these are the initiators. Westerners came and found this foundation, and just somehow, in most instances, plagiarize. They take Plato, Pythagoras. These were people who were trained by Africans. Now, when they were, living in Kemetic, northern Kemetic, they then go and package the information as theirs. And yet, which is why I always say, there's nothing called Western civilization, but only African civilization, because all these people who claimed to have, created a Western civilization were taught by Africans. So, Africa, you're great. It's just that we have been ignorant of ourselves. So now the Shabaka, King Shabaka, he ruled northern Kemetic. He united the north and south, meaning what we now know today as Ethiopia. It was the land of Kush. This is where Okokobetu refined information that started here. Shabaka stones tells a story of Abatwa. Abatwa as being the people who gave us civilization. And it didn't start in the north. Bob Credo always says this. A lot of people get confused to think that Egypt started where it is. No, Egypt started here. You remember the Libombo bone? The Libombo bone is older than the Shango bone. The Shango bone, from DRC, is younger than the Libombo bone. It means, Uguti, these people started here and moved northwards. And the Libombo bone is along, those Intabagai Konjwa, mountain. This is where it was found, here in South Africa. And that puts a very important point to Uguti civilization was ushered in by Indlovukazi. African woman, civilized, or gave us the foundation for a civilization. When you look at the Libombo bone, you would then understand, what we say. And you then look at umazisakazi lapha enzalo elanga. It means, these are two artifacts that confirm ukuthi civilization started nowhere else but here. Because that then became, the foundation of everything else, that we know today. Then we move over to the African creation story. The African creation story, it starts with what Westerners call nothingness. According to African science, there's nothing called nothingness. Because even here in this room, the room is full of atoms. The air outside is full of atoms. And the atoms, if you remember, they have memory. And they are conscious. I normally say that those that are trying to destroy Africans in the labs, the atoms see them before they even complete the job, and then come and give us something so that we are not affected, by that thing, because we've been under attack for a long time. So therefore, this is the primeval waters, Okokobetu called Nun, the waters of abyss. Meaning, Guti, this is a potential energy at rest. Why? Because there was nothing that lived. It means, Uguti, this is the carbon state. If you understand the science Yokoko, they say it's signature yet. According to Dr. Sebi, it is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Without these elements, there's no life on Earth. So therefore, the carbon state, this is when carbon atoms, yonkinto was still squeezed together. Before Guba Nempilo, even that, in those waters of Nun. But Okokobe Tuguti, there were principles Principles, we call them, you know them as elements. Those are in the periodic table. All of them. Remember, Guti, Okhokho Bethu said, there's only one element, which is hydrogen. Because everything is just a repetition of hydrogen. When you look at helium, it's 3 portions of hydrogen. You look at carbon, it's 6 portions of hydrogen. So everything is just a repetition of hydrogen. So when we come to the original state of the universe, before there was this fire, which was, ignited, by Ptah, we'll get to that. There were these principles, Nun, Nunet, Hu, and Huhet, Cook, and Kuket, Amen, Pat. These principles were latent. They were not active. Meaning it was a potential energy at rest. Until then came Upta. Upta, this is the force, the turbulence that happened. What happens when atoms are squeezed together? Agubine turbulence. Upta then becomes the first electrical charge that ignited and created the fire that started, life. Because Upta, it is, that first mound, after creation. Remember, Guti, the Westerners, they call it the Big Bang Theory, that explosion. But Okhokho Bethu, they are saying the roaring waters of Nun. Meaning, Guti, after the energy at rest was activated by Ptah, which became energy, in motion, we call kinetic energy. There was a roar in these water waves. So that is the original, term, that they called. It's almost similar to what Westerners call the Big Bang, theory, because of that first electricity. Remember, Guti, everything is electricity. We are electricity ourselves. Our bodies are moved by electricity. So therefore, Tina, we are a microcosm of what happened in the beginning. Because everything that is in the universe is within us. So we must never, Yingako Ichike always promotes going back and reconnecting with nature. When you reconnect with nature, this is where you find balance and harmony. So Upta becomes the first fire that activated all the elements that were at rest. Now, out of that emerges Atum, the creative, utterance. Atum sits on who? On Ptah, the first mound. Atum comes and sits on top. Atum is represented by the sun. Ilang. It means, Uguti, as long as carbon is ekhona and the turbulence, le create Upta, ulendoza, Atum, Nopta, it means Ilanga will never stop burning because of the prevalence of the carbon. Remember, the sun burns carbon to produce what? Aibo. The sun burns carbon to produce what? Hydrogen, Makesha. So as long as the raw material, because umhlaba wonke uzungezwe is covered by this watery substance we call the waters of noon, and that is a carbon. Huh? So as long as it's there, the sun will always shine. You will never find a day whereby the sun says, no, I'm on strike. I'm not giving you light. It is the destiny of the sun to actually shine on us and create the life forms forever, creating those life forms. And when we talk about the tomb, we are talking about the sun, and we are talking about a vibrational frequency. Remember, everything is frequency. Everything moves. Nothing stands still, even a rock or anything that is here on this. It has its own vibrational frequency. So the sun is the highest, vibrational frequency. Then the sun goes through what we call a transformation. Meaning that you transform a carbon. Remember that energy can be destroyed. It can only be transformed from carbon into hydrogen. That's a process we call kepera. Forever becoming, because the sun is forever creating. So we call it kepera, the process of becoming and transforming energy from this form to another. Abelung bayibiza that process cymatics. Cymatics is the process of how energy, is able to affect matter and shape matter. Meaning ukuthi on a flat surface ubeka ipika la ngaphansi ufake inhlabathi la mawudlala le sound different shapes will be formed kulo mhlabathi obambile lapho ikhombisa ukuthi I-sound frequency shapes matter. So ilapho ke makhehla. Then before we conclude, again, remember, sithe atom represents the sun. Ile principle esibiza ukuthi umveli nqangi. The first cause, uqamatha, uramasedi. Before any other creation, there was the sun. Yingakho Africans were not confused about who the creator is. Remember ukuthi the sun produces the hydrogen and your DNA is bonded by hydrogen. So as long as the sun is there, uzophila wena, until ke umzimba wakho no longer is able to carry the spirit or the energy that dwells within you. You then transform, but you never die. There's no death. lento ukuthi lokho nisaba ukulwela into zenu ngoba nisaba ukufa ayikho yonke leyo nto kumele vele ufe to save generations to come. Hey, you can't ufuna ukuphila nje wena kepha uphila under subjugation. Ayisebenzi leyo nto. Let me die to save my children and my grandchildren so that ibona baphila kahle. So ngithandile ke lela hubo lokuthi vele leli belihlabetshelwa indlovukazi belithini. Hayi lelo lekhona leqele ngale art. Yini impela? Yini impela kumele makhahle. Remember ukuthi we are now talking about Lenduza the intellectual level, huh? Leo is one side. Kumele siphume ema-classroom, siphume nasendlini, sithathe imkhonto, sibuyise zonke izinto zethu. Into kumele siyenze leyo ngoba uma ngithi yafeyila i-94. Ayifeyilanga. Umhlaba nomcaba ukabuyi. Manje kusho ukuthi manje imkhonto yethu thina mphahlo. Siyabaphahlela labantu ukuze mase sifika kubo bayiwele nje. Singabathintanga nokubathinta ingakho ke kumele nijwayize ukuphahla. Nivuza amadlozi ase-Afrika ukuthi anilekelele. Aninayibhama ngithi. Anamabhomu. Ninani umphahlo. Because nina you are 9 ether beings. Nina mandla kakhulu emoyeni. Yingakho abanifuni la emoyeni. Kumele nihlale njalo niku ego. Kanti isikhathi sokuthi sivuselele umoya. Wangempela manje hayi Jesus Nxese. Amadlozi. Sikhuluma ngamadlozi endawo. Hayi Jesu makhahle into leyo siyazi. Kumele kuvuselele lo moya ukuzosinceda ke. Manje ke uAtom ke ilanga nayi ki creation kaAtom. UAtom manje ke useya creator. Bathini ngeatom when it grows? I divide. Huh? It grows by division atom angithi. Huh? Hayibo ngathi hayi makhehla ngeke. Akithi uzwanike nangu ulenduza uAtom lapha. Remember ukuthi uAtom is the first word that came. Remember ukuthi okhokho bethu thina sibadala. At some point the whole world was just occupied by Africans. Why? Because we're the only people. So our ancestors called it atom. Science, modern science came with the atom. Irreligion yati atom. We are born a progression yalendo le. Kepa kukhulunywa different packaging, but the same principle. So beseke iya divider. It divides into shu and tefnut. Ushu representa umoya. Right? Utefnut representa amanzi. It then forms plasma. I understand the concept of plasma. Makuhlangana umoya namanzi zihlangene so. There couldn't have been any creation by then. Then umvelingangi uAtom sends shu to separate manje. Angithi manje ushu noTefnut bahlangana to form ugap nonut. Ugap umhlaba. Unut isibhakabhaka izulu. Remember ukuthi everything that lives on earth is energized by unut. All the energy, remember the sun, the moon, the stars are all above. And they make everything here on earth lives, animate. So now, unut, no gap, Makufomeka makuhlangana uTefnut noShu, they form iplasma. Right? Iplasma ke le yaseparatwa kuyingakho mawubuka the imagery of ugap no-node in terms of Kemetic images. You'll find that they are separated by Shu. Kule plasma manzi nomoya. Ukuhlangana kwazo had to separate for life to happen. Right? Then again ugap no-node bazala ama principles that I would say ukuthi amadlozi oqala emhlabeni. Remember ukuthi abelungu they talk about the 5 solids. Huh? Okhokho bethu bakhuluma ngama principle mebekhuluma ngabo Oset Neptet Set. They are talking about principles that you know in the periodic table as elements. What is the number 1, element in your periodic table? Thokoza khehla. Ngoba inkosi. Siyesithi ihydrogen le inkosi yamakhosi because yonke into ihydrogen. Bangakutshela kune helium, kuna lokhu. It's just a repetition of the same thing. Then again, on earth, what is the prevalent element? Emhlabeni wethu. Nitrogen, makhehla. Remember ukuthi ihydrogen may figure la in our environment, it dissipates and transforms into nitrogen. Right? Ilapho makhehla. So, prevalent, element ekhona, it is nitrogen. And nakhona izalwa yini uAsa no Oset. What is Asa? Asa is represented by the sun. What is Oset? Unomkhubulwane. Sithe uAsa umvelinqangi. Uoset unomkhubulwane. Meaning ukuthi is the energy from the sun and the moon. This is what makes everything on earth animate. Yingakho, even us, we have this electromagnetic field. We have a torus field around us that controls our emotions. So yiyo ke le science makhehla engikhuluma ngayo. Ezosinikeza a deeper understanding because okhokho bethu, what they were more focused on in pushing us, they would say, know yourself. Because without a self-knowledge, we are vulnerable. Anybody can sway you in their direction. And mawuzazi wena ukuthi i-constitution yakho. It's like, as an example, somebody who is born during this month, le ka heteru, sibiza ukuthi October inyanga ka heteru. They have certain characteristics that are similar to a character of the principle of the season. Yingakho mawuthi wazi umuntu usuke wazi I character yakhe ngithi. Isigebengu sibona nje siza ukuthi isigebengu netsotsi kanjalo. Manje umuntu umbona ngezenzo. Ukuthi uthini amagama 1000 it means nothing lokho. Buka nje izenzo zakhe. Izenzo zakhe zizokutshela a lot about themselves. So manje ke yingakho okhokho bethu ke basinikeza lemfundiso. Basinikeza I-foundation yes science because modern science depended on this. Without this foundation they wouldn't have anything to teach. They were taught, all of them, Abu Pythagoras, all these Greek and Roman philosophers were taught by your ancestors. So therefore, you are the bringer of civilization in the world. Mengikhuluma ngawe because when you are a reincarnation of your ancestor, you are here because your ancestors were here. Thokozani, siyabonga. Siyabonga. Oh.
Yo. Yeah, that's what I can say. Siyathokoza Mkhulu for the insightful presentation. I cannot do justice in terms of thanking your presentation, but I will invite from the School of Applied Human Sciences, Prof. Matowane. She will do justice on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good morning, colleagues and students, and Ubaba Nsingiza. Our Program Director earlier spoke about how people in different continents introduce meetings. And I was expecting him to say in Africa, we introduce meetings through song. And I'm very glad that we have changed that narrative of saying apology and starting with apologies, because we've demonstrated through the Ma'at Institute how things are done in Africa. Colleagues, yeah, I don't know if I will do justice to thank Ubaba Nsingiza as well myself, because I think we can all agree that we have drunk from a fountain of deep wisdom. We as I was listening to Baba Nsingiza, what came to mind was, we think there is no African scholarship. And as we were listening to him, we hear people say there is no science in indigenous knowledge, in African knowledge systems. And we've heard how Ubaba Nsingiza gave us a scientific explanation of how Kemet was created, of the Kemet African story of creation. And so I just want to say, Ubaba Nsingiza, we really appreciate the insightful presentation that you shared with us. Thank you so much for, there's a saying that says knowledge is power. And I don't think we should take that saying very lightly. If we've listened to Ubaba Nsingiza this morning, the power in the knowledge that he's given us, it goes deeper than just hearing about that knowledge. For me, it's about where we come from. It's about our roots as Africans. But also for me, it's about identity. Who are we as Africans? And that was unpacked very nicely for us by Ubaba Nsingiza. And one of the things that he spoke about in terms of the power of knowledge, it's also about where is the source of that knowledge? Because that source gives the knowledge credibility, as I was listening to him. So it's important that we get credible knowledge in order for us to be able to share the platform in changing the narrative in knowledge creation. Because we know that Africa has been marginalized, was marginalized, and there's the narrative that there is nothing good that can come from Africa, that we don't have anything to share. But with Baba Nsingiza's presentation today, we can see that there is so much that we can offer the world out there. And so I really want to thank you greatly, Ubaba Nsingiza, for sharing with us the story of the African creation. And I think you also gave us a challenge. Right at the beginning, you challenged us around how do we then use that knowledge that we has been given to us and has been exposed to us. And one of the things that you mentioned was around renaming perhaps Africa. Yes. That's what you said to us. And that's the challenge that you posed to us. But then you also went maybe a step further. You started with the local. You said UKZN. perhaps we might want to rename the university. And so that's food for thought, I think, for us. And I just want to say on behalf of the College of Humanities, thank you very much for sharing this with us and for creating a very powerful platform, an opening stage for this conference. Because I want to believe that our students have learned something from this presentation, which they can take with them as they continue on their journey of being scholars.